So after waiting all year, the sun's finally out. Finally, I can wear my leathers again. I can shelf the textiles, at least on dry days. So I thought I'd come for a little ride and talk to you guys about dropping your bike and how to get over the fear of dropping your bike, because let's be real, none of us want to drop our bikes, and whether people will admit it or not, I think every single motorcyclist is scared of dropping their bike. You know, it's not a nice thing to think about. You know, obviously if you drop it, it's expensive, you know, to get things resprayed or repaired. So every motorcyclist, I think, is a little bit scared of dropping their bikes, and it's not a problem. But the problem starts when it begins to stunt your development, and there's things that you're scared to do on your bike because you're too scared of dropping it. So for example, when I first bought this bike, I was way too scared to practice any of my slow speed skills, like my U-turns and stuff, because I didn't want to drop the bike. It was brand new, it didn't have a scratch on it. I was even too scared to just push it around, and you know, I used to ask somebody else if they could help me turn it around. You know, if I'd parked in a biker cab or something, I'd get somebody else to help me turn it around. So I was even too scared to just touch the bike because I didn't want it to fall over. And that can be really damaging, I think, you know, because it's very easy to avoid things that you're scared of, but the more you avoid them, the harder it becomes to actually, you know, once your confidence grows a bit, to actually do them. You know, if you've spent 6 months on a bike and you've never done a U-turn because you've always found a way to avoid it, it becomes very difficult to then go out and say, I'm going to practice my U-turns, because you've probably got very good at avoiding doing that. So at some point, if we want to improve as motorcyclists and we want to become better riders, we do have to get over the fear of dropping the bike. And I'm going to give you some tips and strategies. Some of them are physical tips you can do, drills you can practice. Some of them are just more psychological, you know, advice. And hopefully that will help some of you who are really nervous about getting on your bike and really nervous about dropping it. So my first tip is a practical one, and that's to fit some crash protection to your bike, especially if it's your first bike and it's a new bike. You know, the first thing I did when I got this bike is I had them fit crash sliders to it that I've shown you guys on another video. And I said on that video, there's no way I'm letting this bike touch the floor without crash protectors on it. You know, if you're riding around on a very expensive bike or a brand new bike, or even just a bike that's new to you, I'd also be scared of dropping it, you know? And I am a little bit scared of dropping this, so that's why I fit the crash protection to it. Some people say with sliders, you know, if you crash at speed, it can actually be worse because they can dig in and bend the frame of your bike or cause your bike to flip over. I don't really, you know, I'm not really too worried about that. I think if you crash at speed, your bike is probably going to be damaged anyway. But what they will protect against is all the slow speed drops, you know, dropping it in your garage after a long day, dropping it in a car park, just trying to wheel it around. So if that's what you're scared of, then crash protection definitely will help. So you can get sliders, you can get engine bars. They're more popular on you know, cruisers and adventure bikes. You see those big engine bars. And you can just get some other crash protection like bar end sliders. I think if I ever remove these bar end mirrors, which I'm considering, then I'll replace them with a set of RNG bar end sliders instead. Just protect the bar ends a little bit. So that's a practical thing you can do. You can even get, you know, on training school bikes, you see those big metal cages that go around the handlebars. There's a reason training school bikes use those, and it's because they get dropped a lot, and they do a really good job just protecting your levers, your handlebars. I think on my 125 I would have really done well with getting some of those because I broke so many levers. I think the money I spent replacing levers, it would have paid for itself, those crash bars. So they do look a bit ugly, but you know what, if it's between having your bike look a little bit ugly and never going out and never practicing because you're too scared, I'd rather have my bike look a little bit ugly. So fit some crash protection to your bike. That's my first and probably my biggest tip. My other tip is more of a mindset thing. And you know, there's a lot of emotions tied up in motorcycling, and I have mentioned this before as well, but you know, when you break it down, you know, our bikes, we love them. They're quite expensive, some of them. You know, they hold a lot of happy memories. It's our hobby. But when you strip away all the emotion, what are you left with a motorbike? You're left with plastic and metal bolted together, and that's it. And really, you know, I love motorbikes and I love riding motorbikes, but let's be real, it's just plastic and metal bolted together, and everything on a motorbike is replaceable. The entire motorbike is replaceable. So if you drop your bike and you damage it, let's say you crack a mirror and you have to spend some money replacing a mirror or a bar end, or worse, maybe you put a hole in the side of an engine case or something, and it's, you know, you cause some really expensive damage, although that's pretty unlikely, to be honest, just from dropping it. But let's say that happens. How does the world change? It doesn't. How does your world change? It doesn't. Apart from maybe you got some expensive repairs, you know, maybe you can't afford them, you might have to wait a little bit, you know, you might have to ride around with a scratched bike because you haven't got the money to get it resprayed. And that's it, right? It's just a little bit disappointing. Let's be real, it's just a little bit disappointing. It's really not worth stunting your development over. It's not worth panicking every time you have to do a U-turn because you're too scared of your bike going down. So it's more just a mindset thing, and it takes a little while. But really, you do have to, with motorcycling, you do have to strip the emotion out of it and recognise that it's just plastic and metal. If it gets damaged, you can fix it, and you can fix a lot of things pretty easily, to be fair. When I was doing my training for my licence, my instructor told me a story of one student who was so scared of dropping the bike that she just wouldn't turn it, you know, on any of the U-turns. She wouldn't even do circles on the bike because she was just so scared of the bike going down. So my instructor took the bike, kicked it off its side turn and threw it on the floor. And the student was like, "Oh my god, what are you doing? What are you doing?" And my instructor was like, "Pick the bike up." So the student picked it up and she said, "Okay, now get on it and ride it." And my instructor's point was that she didn't care about the bike going down because it was, you know, it's a training school bike, it's covered in crash protection, it's insured, it doesn't matter. But the other point was, for that student, a barrier had been overcome. You know, that student was so scared of dropping the bike, and she realised that if the bike goes down, so what? Nothing changes, it doesn't matter. And it's the same when it's your own personal bike. As disappointing as it is, you know, no one will be as disappointed as I will if this bike gets dropped, but realistically, it really, really doesn't matter. So if it's going to stunt your development that much and you're going to be shaking every time you have to turn your bike around, it's really not worth it. Another good thing to do is just to go out and practice things like U-turns. You know, for me, like I mentioned, that even manual handling, I was scared of just physically turning the bike around, you know, in a parking bay or something like that. So what I did, you know, and I was scared for about 2-3 months after I got this bike. I was really, really nervous about things like turning it around or doing U-turns. So I took it to a car park and I just practiced wheeling it around in one bay, out of another bay, you know, turning it, parking it frontways, parking it backwards. And it really made a big difference because this isn't a heavy bike as bikes go, but I'm pretty short and I'm pretty light and I'm not very strong. So even this bike, it takes a little bit of effort for me to turn it around. And that's what I was scared of, compared to my 125, which was a fair bit lighter. And also this bike doesn't really have anywhere easy to grab onto. My 125 had some nice grab rails on there. So it just took me a little bit of time to get used to physically manual handling the bike. Like I say, wheeling it in one bay, wheeling it out. And now when I have to do that, I have my own sort of technique and my own little knack to it. And it takes me a little while, but I'm not so scared now of dropping the bike when I move it around, because I've practiced it and I'm used to it. And it's the same if you're scared of doing things like U-turns. As boring as it is, go and do a bunch of U-turns. You know, don't worry about how tight you can do a U-turn just for now. Just worry about doing them. Don't worry about going out there with the intention of, I'm going to do a U-turn within 2 parking bays or 3 parking bays or something like that. You can practice that as you get a little bit better and as you get a little bit more confident. But just for now, just go out and practice. I'm going to do a U-turn and that's it. You know, left, right. I'm going to wheel the bike around. The more you do it, the more you'll realise that you're more skilled than you think you are, and you can do a lot more than you think you can do. And the bike isn't just going to fall over every time you need to turn it around or every time you touch it. It's not just going to fall over. There's techniques to doing these things, and once you get the technique down, even if it's your own little flavour of technique, you know, like how I push the bike around, once you get it down, you can do these things pretty reliably. And you might have a mishap, maybe one day you'll slip or you'll be tired and you'll mess something up, but 90% of the time, 99% of the time, you'll be able to do a U-turn or you'll be able to manual handle the bike without it just falling over on you. When I first got my 125, I wasn't used to not being able to touch the floor because I'd never ridden a motorbike before. So I can't touch the floor on that bike I couldn't touch the floor really with both feet, maybe just about on my tiptoes. But things got much easier when I learned to just put one foot down, so one foot on the rear brake usually and my left foot down, or depending on the camber of the road it might be the other way. But if you're consistently dropping your bike at a standstill, you know, from a stop, either at a traffic light or a stop line or something like that, then again, just practice moving off 5 miles an hour, stopping, put one foot down, put the other foot down, you know, scoot your butt off the seat a little bit or scoot your butt off the other way, just whatever works more comfortably for you, do that. And once you build up, again, a little technique, even if it's your own personal technique that works for you, you'll find that you'll start dropping bikes a lot less often because you'll have better technique. So instead of trying to put just your tiptoes down and struggling and slipping on gravel and stuff like that, you'll drop the bike less often because you'll have a nice flat surface, you know, your entire foot to hold the bike up with. But I'm going to make another video on sort of short people riding tips. But hopefully those tips to help you get over the fear of dropping your bike were useful. I think most of it is psychological. A little bit of it might be, you know, your physical skill, your physical ability at doing things like U-turns and slow speed. But a lot of it I think is just in your head. And once you can get over that psychologically, then you can start practicing some of the physical things, like actually practicing your slow speed. And you'll start dropping bikes almost never, which is great. I think it's especially hard if your bike is brand new because, you know, it literally has not a scratch on it. And there's actually a bicycle company, I can't remember the name of it, but it's a very expensive bicycle company. They make custom bikes for people. And one of the options, the extras that you can get added on when you're configuring your bike is first scratch. And they'll ship it to you with a little bit of a scratch on it. And the point is that when you get something new and shiny, you're very scared to damage it. Once you've ridden the bike for a bit, you know, and you've scuffed up the tank from your zipper and you've scuffed up the seat because you caught your boot on it or something, then it becomes a lot less scary, and the prospect of damaging your bike slightly, it matters a little bit less because it's already got some scratches and dings and dents and whatever on it. So I think just ride the bike for a few months. Naturally it just will get scratched, it will get damaged, you know, from where your boot sits and, like I say, where the zipper on your jacket sits and things like that. It's not gonna look as nice as the first day you bring it home, and that's fine. You know, that is how it is. It's character. Every little scratch tells a story at the end of the day. So just ride the bike and enjoy the bike, and don't worry about it going down. The thought of it's scary, but honestly, it really doesn't matter. Life goes on, and like I say, it's not worth you stunting your development over. It's not worth being scared over. So hopefully those tips were useful to you guys. Let me know if you have any of your own tips, or if you have any of your own stories of dropping bikes. I know I have quite a few. And in the meantime, safe riding, and I'll see you guys in the next one.